everyone. The time is currently 3:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on this Friday, December 1st, 2023, which, by the way, is also the first day of meteorological winter. Not astronomical winter, but meteorological winter, which is defined as the coldest 3 months of the year. I've been looking forward to this video for a long time, and today I'm very happy to be presenting it to you all. So welcome to my first official YouTube weather video. So before I get started with things, I just wanted to give you all a little quick introduction. So I've actually had a strong interest in meteorology now most of the time over the past 10 or 11 years. So I've decided that it was time for me to create my first official weather YouTube video. So here it is for you all. So as you can see, what we are going to be looking at here first in today's first weather video is the updated official 30-day forecasts from yesterday, Thursday, November 30th, 2023, across the entire United States for temperature and precipitation. Now, as you can see, we're actually looking at here on NOAA's temperature forecast for above normal temperatures compared to what is typical based on the 30-year climate normal, which now is 1991 to 2020. We can see above normal temperatures for most of the country, with the only areas that are in equal chances in the contiguous lower 48 states are part of the southwestern United States, more closer to the southwest coast of the United States, and for a lot of Maine there, roughly the northern 2/3 to 3/4 of those areas in equal chances for above or below average temperatures. For Alaska, we can see equal chances for the majority of the state, and then in the northern tier, leaning towards at least slightly above average temperatures, with below average temperatures possible across some southern portions of the state. Now, as for precipitation, we can see we have equal chances for above or below average precipitation for a large part of the United States, with above average precipitation forecasted for the northwest United States, especially for western Washington state. We also have some above average precipitation forecast for parts of the southern and eastern United States, especially for a lot of Florida there, southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, a lot of Alabama, most of Georgia, and part of southern South Carolina, and extending up the east coast there. We also have a small area where we could be looking at more towards below average precipitation for along the northern tier of the north central United States there. For Alaska, we could be looking at least slightly above average precipitation for the eastern half to 2/3 of the state, and then equal chances of above or below average precipitation further west. Now as we move on to the 3-month outlook's official forecasts, so we're going to be looking all the way. We're going to be looking at these forecasts, through from December, January, February of 2023 to 2024 through February, March, and April of 2024. So, as we can see here, for the current 3-month period that we just entered of as today, and by the way, this is from Thursday, November 16th, 2023, the last time that all of these 3-month outlook periods were updated for the entire United States. We can see we have above normal temperatures expected for the West Coast, the Northern United States, the Midwest, Northeast, and kind of some northern portions of the Mid-South there. We can see overall in the lower 48 states, the highest probability for above average temperatures is from Northern California through most of Oregon, Washington State, far or extreme northwestern Montana, and a lot of northern Idaho, as well as most of northern and interior New England state. We have above average temperatures as well expected for Alaska and for the rest of the contiguous lower 48 states. We have equal chances for above or below average temperatures, with an area of near normal temperatures. They're favored for the southern plains, for portions of the southern plain states, through up through eastern Colorado and eastern New Mexico, that is. Now as we move on to the seasonal precipitation outlook, we can see some above average precipitation for a good portion of for a portion of the country, mainly for areas further south. I would say we have strongly favored above average precipitation along the southeast United States, especially Florida, southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, at least the southern half of Alabama, most of Georgia, almost all of South Carolina, a lot of North Carolina. So those areas, we have equal chances for above or below average precipitation for kind of part of the desert southwest a little bit there, and also we have some equal chances for above or below average precipitation running from the Pacific Northwest through part of the north central United States into portions of the Mid-South and up through the interior Mid-Atlantic and Northeast United States at least slightly above average, at least a little bit above average precipitation for some northern portions of Alaska, equal chances for above or below average precipitation for a good chunk of the state, especially there in the central part of Alaska, and slightly below average precipitation for portions further south in Alaska. Now, as we move on to January, February, and March of 2024, we see above average temperatures continuing for a lot of the West Coast, northern United States, Midwest, parts of the Mid-South, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast, with near normal temperatures for parts of the Southeast there, and equal chances for above average or below average temperatures for areas in between, including at least the southern half of Florida there. We also have some above average temperatures expected for Alaska, and we can actually see on screen here towards Hawaii a little bit on screen. Also equal chances for above or below average temperatures, by the way, as well. Now for precipitation, we kind of see a very similar pattern as the previous 3-month period. We see above average precipitation still expected for the southeast coast, especially the deeper southeast coast, a little bit extending northward up into the mid-Atlantic coast and southern New England coast. We have above average precipitation possible for most of California, and leaning slightly above average precipitation across most of the rest of Nevada, most of Utah, Colorado, Nebraska, a lot of Kansas. I think that's right, so that's at least the western half of Missouri, southwest. I forgot what state that is, but I think that's Iowa, actually. So for the most part in those areas. And then equal chances for above or below average precipitation parts of the desert southwest, western Texas, and also equal chances for above or below average precipitation for the for the Pacific Northwest, the north central United States, the lower Midwest there, up into the interior Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. In Alaska, we see above average precipitation possible across far northern areas, equal chances for most of the state, and below average precipitation, slightly below average precipitation possible there across far southern portions of the state. Now, as we move on to February, March, and April of 2024, we can see, similar to the previous 3-month periods, we can see above average precipitation for a lot of the west, above average temperatures expected across the west, especially Pacific Northwest there, northern tier of the United States, Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. We actually for this 3-month period have below average temperatures possible for most of Texas, southeastern New Mexico, a sliver there of southern Oklahoma. We also have a small area of near normal temperatures possible for some northern areas of Florida, most of Georgia, most of South Carolina, and a southern sliver of North Carolina. For Alaska, we still are looking at above average temperatures, most likely. In terms of precipitation, we are still looking at above average precipitation, likely across the southeast, a little bit up through part of the lower mid-Atlantic coast. We have some above average precipitation, slightly above average precipitation, possible across the south central and central United States there. And for Alaska, we also have slightly above average precipitation possible across some northern part of the northern tier, and also a tiny bit maybe across part of the southern tier. Now we're actually going to go on and we're actually going to move forward and look here at the ENSO, which actually stands for El Niño Southern Oscillation, Recent Evolution, Current Status, and Predictions. There's a lot of information here, so we're only going to be going over certain parts of this. I guess the parts that are most relevant to this video. We see what it says here for the outline here. So we're going to start with the summary here. So the ENSO, or El Niño Southern Oscillation Alert System status, we're currently in El Niño advisory. El Niño conditions are observed. Equatorial sea surface temperatures, or SSTs, are above average across the central and eastern Pacific Ocean. The tropical Pacific atmospheric anomalies are consistent with El Niño. El Niño is anticipated to continue through the northern hemisphere spring, with a 62% chance during April through June of 2024. And by the way, a note, these statements are updated once a month on the second Thursday of each month in association with the ENSO Diagnostics discussion, which can be found by clicking right here. For the purposes of this video, we're not going to be looking at that, by the way, in today's video. I'm going to skip that part, and we're going to move on. We're going to be looking at right here the Niño region, SST, or sea surface temperature departures in degrees Celsius recent evolution. The latest weekly SST departures are Niño 4, which is kind of this area here, 1.5 degrees Celsius, Niño 3.4 overlapping between Niño 3 and Niño 4, 1.9 degrees Celsius above average, Niño 3, 2.1 degrees Celsius above average, and Niño 1 plus 2, 2 degrees Celsius above average. And let's see, we're going to skip some of these sections over here. Let's see. I'm just going to read the first paragraph of this section, Oceanic Niño Index, or ONI. So the ONI is based on SST departures from average in the Niño 3.4 region, and is a principal measure for monitoring, assessing, and predicting ENSO. NOAA operational definitions for El Niño and La Niña, to give you a little bit of insight on what that means. El Niño characterized by a positive ONI greater than or equal to 0.5 degrees Celsius or more above average, and La Niña characterized by a negative ONI less than or equal to 0.5 degrees Celsius below average. and by historical standards to be classified as a full-fledged El Nino or La Nina episode. These thresholds must be exceeded for a period of at least 5 consecutive overlapping 3-month seasons. CPC, or the Climate Prediction Center, considers El Nino or La Nina conditions to occur when the monthly Nino 3.4 OISST, I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, but I know that the SST part stands for sea surface temperatures, so departures, or anomalies, meet or exceed ±/- 0.5 degrees Celsius, so compared to average, along with consistent atmospheric features. These anomalies must also be forecasted to persist for 3 consecutive months. In terms of the ONI in degrees Celsius evolution since 1950, so here's kind of a map that shows when we've had El Nino, La Nina, and Enso neutral conditions since 1950. Yes, so El Nino conditions, positive anomalies, neutral in the middle, and La Nina conditions, representative of below average sea surface temperature anomalies. So anyways, the most recent ONI value, August through October 2023, is 1.5 degrees Celsius above average, which by the way is actually right at the low end of a strong El Nino threshold, by the way. And here we can see historical El Nino and La Nina episodes based on the ONI computed using ERSST version number 5. I'm not exactly sure what this entire phrase means either, but we can see that is true here for 1.5 degrees Celsius above average SSTs for August, September, and October combined 3-month periods. Probabilistic ENSO outlook, updated Thursday, November 9th, 2023. El Nino is favored from northern hemisphere spring 2024, with chances gradually decreasing from the winter through the spring. A transition to ENSO neutral is favored in May through July of 2024. Official NOAA CPC ENSO probabilities from November 2023. We can see near certainty of El Nino conditions lasting through late winter at least. Probably through the spring as well, with only a very low chance of ENSO neutral conditions through the spring, and then we could be looking at ENSO neutral conditions starting to build through the summer, with a little bit lower chances of El Nino and a very slight chance of a La Nina, of another La Nina building back towards the summertime, although that is rather unlikely at this time, at least for the summertime of 2024. So the IRI Pacific Nino 3.4 SST model outlook, I'm not sure what IRI means, but the majority of models indicate El Nino will persist through April through June 2024, and then transition to ENSO neutral at its peak November through January. Nearly all models suggest a moderate to strong El Nino, with NOI values at or greater than 1 degree Celsius, which is at the low end threshold of a moderate El Nino strength. We can see that on average, well, at least the dynamical model average is peaking at around 2 degrees Celsius above average sea surface temperature anomalies earlier in the winter. We can see the CPC console and statistical average are closer to peaking at 1.5 degrees Celsius sea surface temperature anomalies above average and then lowering sea surface temperature anomalies heading into and through next year. And by the way, it's this figure provided by the International Research Institute, so I think that's what IRI now I see means, right, for Climate and Society, updated Thursday, October 19th, 2023. For the SST Outlook NCEP CFS version 2 forecast PDF corrected from November 20th, 2023. The CFS version 2 ensemble mean black dashed line indicates El Niño will continue through the northern hemisphere spring 2024. A moderate to strong El Niño is favored in December through February. ONI between 1 degree Celsius above average and 2 degrees Celsius above average. And we can see that here, peaking at between 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius above average early in the season, before becoming weaker heading into next year. And we're going to skip some of these sections here. U.S. temperature and precipitation departures during the last 30 days. Percent of average precipitation, we can see below average precipitation there for a lot of areas. Some areas right around here, especially in this pocket here, seeing more precipitation than average in the past 30 days. In terms of temperatures, most of the country seeing above average temperatures during the past 30 days, with an area of a little bit of more towards below average temperatures, a little bit for some northern and western parts further west in the United States. And for U.S. temperature and precipitation departures during the last 30 days, end date Friday, November 18th, 2023. Actually, I think Saturday, November 18th, 2023. We can see below average precipitation for most of these areas, above average precipitation for a lot of these areas, especially in this pocket right here. And then for temperatures as well, in the 9-day period, most areas seeing above average temperatures, with only a few areas of slightly below average of a tiny bit below average temperatures. One right here, a little bit bigger one right in this area, and a tiny a little smaller area of part of the southeast coast there. For seasonal outlooks, I think this is from the 3-month outlooks here that I showed you a little while ago. So anyways, the summary here is, I think, I believe it's also at the beginning of this page as well. But anyways, the next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is actually look at some temperature and precipitation analogs, specifically all strong El Niño winters since 1950 that were observed throughout the contiguous lower 48 states. We're going to be looking at, this is going to be giving us some insight onto this season's meteorological winter. Now keep in mind, these are not my official winter analog years for this winter in this video, but it's kind of meant to give you some insight on what to expect across the lower 48 states of the United States. So we can see above average temperatures across most of the north, below average temperatures further south, with a little area right here of temperatures closer to average between. This is for December through February 1957, 1958, 1972 to 1973, 1982 to 1983, 1991 to 1992, 1997 to 1998, 2009 to 2010, and 2015 to 2016. So the average of all of these 7 years. And then we're going to do the same thing for precipitation. So December through February of the same years. Here we can see above average precipitation along part of the west coast, along almost all of the west coast actually, across the southern tier and most of the east coast, with an area of slightly above average precipitation, as well as a small area right in here, a few areas, one here, part of the north, a small area over part of the northwestern United States, a small area over kind of the lower Midwest area there, and closer to average precipitation in between. Now for January through March, since March can sometimes be a wintry month as well, I think it's also a good idea to look at these 3 months, to look at this period, and we can also see some above average precipitation across the west coast, especially there in northern and central California, certain portions of the southern tier, and for part of the southeast coast as well, extending up through a few other areas, including kind of right around here, including in southern eastern New England, with a small area of below average precipitation there for part of the Midwest, and then closer to average precipitation there across the south, for most of the rest of the United States. There is going to be the same winters here, so 1958, 1973, 1983, 1992, 1998, 2010, and 2016, so the average of those 7 years. So I actually meant to do temperature first, but now we're looking at temperature for those years. We can see for those same years above normal temperatures for a lot of the northern United States, with below average temperatures for somewhere between the southern half to maybe closer to the southern half as opposed to the southern 2/3 of the United States, but maybe somewhere in between, extending ever so slightly, possibly further north, ever so slightly though, up through the United States, compared to the December through February temperature analogs. And by the way, I want to show you actually for December through February precipitation outlook here. By the way, you might be curious to know, I think that the storm track is kind of doing something like this, with the jet stream, the southern subtropical jet stream, kind of going like this. You might have heard that we have an elevated chance of some major nor'easters possibly this winter, more especially later in the winter time, that could be going up like this. And if we have enough cold air going in like this, moving this way, we could see the southern subtropical jet stream and northern polar jet streams merging together off somewhere off the east coast there. We can see, oh sorry, I had this tab open by the way, but anyways, the last thing that we're going to be looking at here to give you a little bit of a more medium range outlook. So this specifically going to be more geared towards the DC area / region. So total snowfall 10 to 1 inch ratio. And by the way, what this means is that it's going to be equivalent of 10 times more snow in inches as opposed to rain. So for example, 10 inches of snow would be completely melted into 1 inch of rain. So in other words, the snow would be made up of 90% cold air and 10% water, is what that means. So we can see through from the latest 12Z run or Zulu time, which is going to be from 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I mean 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning, Friday, December 1st, 2023, through the next 10 days ending at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday, December 11th, 2023. We can see maybe a little bit of snow across some northern parts of the DC region, but I would have to say that because of probably some more marginally warm surface temperatures, and also, well, more like actually that the snow will probably be wetter too, but maybe not all the snow would accumulate as well. So I would say whatever this is showing, I would say that maybe it's going to be about 40% less or 60% of this amount right here. And this is on, and by the way, this is on the European high resolution model. So if we look here at the GFS or Global Forecasting System, also known as the American model, we can see actually goes all the way through Sunday, December 17th, 2023 at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This model run is not showing as much snow making it into the DC area, mainly for part of north central Virginia there. So that's about it. Actually that's 10 to 1 ratio, but if we look at total snowfall in Couture ratio, which is a more accurate measurement or assessment of determining snowfall accumulation, it shows maybe even a tiny bit less, just a tiny bit there for parts of north central Virginia. And now if we look at the Canadian model, right here, that's the GDPS model, by the way, is just going to be the Canadian model for the next 10 days, ending Monday, December 11th, 2023 at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We don't really see any snow making to the DC area, just yet. So the main takeaway from this is we don't expect very much snow potential at all in the next 10 to 15 days. Well, at least for the next 10 days overall it looks like. So that's that, and that's actually it for today's video. Actually, I know this video was a while, but I hope that you all enjoyed my very first own official YouTube weather video. And I hope that you all have a nice rest of your day and nice weekend. Thank you for watching. Consider liking the video if you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. So have a nice day again, everyone. Bye.